Hello, everybody. I'm Dan Murrell here with some major breaking news. Just like last week, we had major breaking news with Netflix announcing that they were going to acquire Warner Brothers Discovery. Well, Paramount Skydance is not going down without a fight. This was always a possibility, but I'm honestly a little shocked that they're actually going through with it. David Ellison and Paramount Skydance announced this morning that they are beginning a hostile takeover bid for Warner Brothers Discovery by putting in what they call a tender offer. We've discussed hostile takeovers a little bit here on the channel before. It was a possibility back before there was a bidding war that David Ellison would do this, but he has decided that Warner Brothers Discovery didn't take the best offer on the table, so he's going to go straight to the shareholders and ask them to vote on his offer, and if they do, then Paramount Skydance will acquire Warner Brothers Discovery. But there's a lot of road between here and there. Let's get into the details first of all. The offer that Paramount Skydance is making directly to the shareholders is an all-cash offer at $30 per share, which is higher than Netflix's offer, which came in at $27.75 a share with 85% cash and 15% Netflix stock. That's what Warner Brothers board agreed to. That puts the valuation of the company at $108 billion with Paramount's offer. Keep in mind that the Warner Brothers Discovery merger was at a valuation of $43 billion. So the price of this company is skyrocketing as this bidding war escalates. Paramount said that its deal will be fully financed by the Ellison family, so David Ellison's father, Larry Ellison, etc., Redbird Capital, which helped to finance the Paramount acquisition, along with $54 billion of debt commitments from Bank of America, Citi, and Apollo, and the offer expires in 1 month unless it's extended. An interesting side note here is that Warner Brothers, per its agreement with Netflix, would have to pay $2.8 billion to Netflix if the company decides to take another offer. Now, briefly, the way that a hostile takeover like this works, I am not a financial expert, so I'm sure there are many people that can go more in depth on this, is that Paramount Skydance takes this offer to the shareholders of Warner Brothers Discovery. Now, there's going to be a lot of argument in the public from Warner Brothers Discovery and Netflix and from Paramount as to whether they should or should not accept this offer. If a majority of shareholders decide that they want to sell their stock, basically, and take the offer, then they will do that. And then there's a secondary process called a squeeze merger, where if a majority of shareholders say that they are going to sell their stock to Paramount Skydance, then there's a process where the rest are bought out because they've essentially been squeezed out of control. It basically results in the same thing. David Ellison made an appearance on CNBC this morning shortly after the hostile takeover was announced to lay out his case as to why Paramount Skydance is taking this action.
What we were told repeatedly was that they wanted all cash. We delivered all cash. We are offering shareholders $17.6 billion more cash than the deal that they currently have signed up with Netflix. And we believe when they see what is currently in our offer, that that's what they'll vote for.
In a press release, Paramount Skydance said, quote, Paramount's proposed global transaction is for the entirety of WB Discovery, including the global network segment. Paramount's strategically and financially compelling offer to Warner Brothers Discovery shareholders provides a superior alternative to the Netflix transaction, which offers inferior and uncertain value and exposes Warner Brothers Discovery shareholders to a protracted, multi-jurisdictional regulatory clearance process with an uncertain outcome, along with a complex and volatile mix of equity and cash. Paramount also launched a website called StrongerHollywood.com to make their case. There are a lot of things listed on the website, and we're going to look at a few of them in a second. But one of the statements on that site said, quote, Paramount is highly confident in achieving expeditious regulatory clearance for its proposed offer as it enhances competition and is pro-consumer while creating a strong champion for creative talent and consumer choice. In contrast, the Netflix transaction is predicated on the unrealistic assumption that its anti-competitive combination with Warner Brothers Discovery, which would entrench its monopoly with a 43% share of global subscription video on demand subscribers, could withstand multiple protracted regulatory challenges across the world. The Netflix transaction creates a clear risk of higher prices for consumers, lower pay for content creators and talent, and the destruction of American and international theatrical exhibitors. Netflix has never undertaken large-scale acquisitions, resulting in increased execution risk, which Warner Brothers Discovery shareholders would have to endure. And one of the things that's on this website is kind of a side-by-side of the two offers and why Paramount Skydance's is better. Now, I want to make very clear here, I am not saying that Paramount Skydance's is better. This is the case that the company is making, and I'm going to provide some counterpoints to some of these things in a few minutes. But when you look at these two side by side, Paramount is saying that their offer is better because they are offering to buy 100% of Warner Brothers Discovery instead of just the streaming and studios business. Their cash consideration is $30 per share. It's an all-cash offer, whereas Netflix is offering $23.25 per share. Their total consideration is $30 per share, whereas Netflix's is $27.75 per share. Now, this is a big one. Paramount says that the total value of their offer is $30 per share because they're paying cash out of pocket for the whole company, whereas they say that Netflix's total offer value is only $28.75 per share because they believe that Global Network stock will only be $1 per share. So this is going to be a key argument point going forward. David Ellison and Paramount are saying that the Global Networks business, which would be spun off into its own company under a Netflix deal, would only be worth $1 per share once that process has been completed, whereas Warner Brothers and many others have said no, they believe that the company could be worth $3 or $4 per share. And even if it gets up to $2 per share, that then makes Netflix's deal worth more to investors and shareholders because they will have the stock and the cash from the Netflix offer, and then whatever the Global Networks business is worth. That is going to be a big point of argument. And David Zaslav and Warner Brothers Discovery are going to have to convince shareholders that this Global Networks business is going to be worth more than $1 per share. But I'm sure that they will mount a robust effort in that because I think that they want this Netflix deal to go through. I really do. Otherwise, they're going to have to pay $2.8 billion to Netflix, and really it's all about cashing out. This is really what this whole argument is going to be. It's going to be two groups of billionaires trying to convince their shareholders, many of which are also billionaires, which one is going to net them the most money. That's what this argument is going to be. On value certainty, Paramount says that the $30 per share is an all-cash proposal for the entire company, so you absolutely get what you have, a bird in the hand. Whereas Netflix has less certainty of value given the unknown nature of what the linear network's equity value is going to be. So they're saying basically you're taking a risk here because you could be hoping that Global Networks is going to be worth more than it really is. Why not just take the money that we're giving you right now? On closing certainty, Paramount Skydance says they have a clear path to regulatory approval and it provides for superior closing certainty and protections for Warner Brothers Discovery shareholders. Whereas for Netflix, they say it has much more challenging approvals and a later outside date, meaning it will take longer for this to get done, which underscores the regulatory uncertainty. And this circles back to something that we have been talking about. We talked about it really with the Paramount merger with Skydance and the regulatory approval there. And now even more so with this one, the idea of Larry Ellison, who is a backer of this deal. He is a close ally of the president. The fact that Paramount Skydance could essentially grease the wheels on regulation has long been one of their major selling points. And that is now going to be their major selling point, that they will be able to get the regulatory approval for this deal and that Netflix either won't be able to or that it will take a very long period of time to do so. Now, in a perfect world, both of these deals should be subject to major regulatory approval, particularly because with the Paramount Skydance deal, you have the added element of them buying linear cable networks to combine with their existing portfolio. That should trigger regulatory things that Netflix doesn't even have to face on their side. Both of these offers should be met with a massive amount of skepticism. You're combining two movie studios in both cases. You're combining two streamers in both cases, although again with Netflix, it is a much bigger streamer than Paramount Skydance. On the Paramount side, you're combining cable networks. However, there is let's face it, there is a reality in this situation that Paramount Skydance will face a much easier road to get regulatory approval than Netflix. That is their, no pun intended, if you'll pardon the pun here, trump card in this scenario. And this is what they're going to lean on heavily. I don't agree with it. I think this is a bad thing. I don't think in a business deal that you should have one side that is on better terms with the government than the other side. The government, when it comes to regulation, should be a neutral party that's actually looking out for what's best for the people and kind of providing that function, but that's not what we have. Although it should be noted that it was reported this past weekend that Ted Sarandos spoke with President Trump prior to Warner Brothers accepting Netflix's offer, and reportedly he came away with the idea that the regulatory issues wouldn't be a problem. However, the president said yesterday that he thought that the deal between Netflix and Warner Brothers could be a problem and that he would be personally involved in that decision. And that is just one of the things with this particular administration, and I don't even think this is a political statement. This is something that has been noted about President Trump time and time again, which is that when you're in a room with him, you can have a conversation with him. You can think that you came out on one side of the issue, and then he'll surprise you by saying something different than what he said in that meeting. I mean, he can be very mercurial when it comes to things like this, and it can often change on who he's speaking to. Just this morning, while all of this news about the hostile takeover was breaking, the president slammed Paramount on Truth Social because he was not happy with a story that ran on 60 Minutes last night, saying that they were no better than the old ownership and that the show's actually gotten worse. So, they think they know where they stand with them, and then they do something he doesn't like and he'll come up publicly against them. So I think that there have probably been moments when both Netflix and Paramount Skydance have been surprised by some of his statements or indications because they think that they are on better or worse terms with him than they actually are. So there is also some instability there when we're talking about regulation. But I think that it is absolutely undeniable that Paramount Skydance does have the easier road here. As far as timing, Paramount says that their proposal would expect to receive regulatory approvals within 12 months. Whereas with Netflix, Paramount Skydance says they're likely to face a significantly longer approval process or be blocked entirely. And as far as regulatory commitment, Paramount Skydance says that they're committed to exhaustive regulatory efforts up to a material adverse effect on the company, with the process started in multiple regions. They say that Netflix has agreed to more limited regulatory efforts with no obligations to do anything to its existing business. That's all. Who knows if that's true or not? That's just probably between the two companies. So we know what Paramount Skydance is doing. They've put their cards on the table. The question is now, what will Netflix and Warner Brothers Discovery do? And they've got a few different options. One of them is that Netflix could come in and they could just up their offer. They're in negotiations with Warner Brothers Discovery now. They could come in and say, okay, if the Ellisons want to offer, or if Paramount Skydance, I should say, want to offer $30 per share, then we'll offer $32 per share or $34 per share. At the end of the day, when you look at the two companies side by side, Netflix has a valuation, according to the Wall Street Journal, of around $400 billion versus $14 billion for Paramount Skydance. And you could reach a point where Paramount Skydance institutionally just could not take on any more debt, no matter who their backers were, because it's just not financially sound to do that. I mean, right now they'd be taking on over $50 billion of debt if this deal goes through. Netflix could also make some public concessions. Especially for the stronger Hollywood side of things. They could publicly say, all right, we're writing into the deal, for example, that we're going to guarantee a 45 or a 60-day theatrical window for any Warner Brothers release. That would ease some of the criticism, particularly for people that are saying that this would be a disaster for the theatrical exhibition business. If Netflix were to say we are putting in legally binding terms that Warner Brothers movies will have at least the existing theatrical window, that could ease back some of those concerns. Although, again, when you're talking about the shareholders, and I mentioned this in the first video, I don't really think that preservation of the theatrical experience is very high on anyone's list when it comes to the stakeholders here. It's very high on my list. It's very high on the lists of a lot of creatives in Hollywood and a lot of movie fans who enjoy seeing movies in theaters. But I don't really think that that is an argument that's going to resonate with shareholders. However, if you're looking to make this deal look less controversial, that is one concession that Netflix could make publicly. Now, the big concession they could make would be to say that we are going to divest ourselves of HBO Max, either pre or post acquisition. We'll either, work with Warner Brothers Discovery now to do it, or we will promise to do it after we acquire the company. Regulation wise, if you're not combining HBO Max with Netflix, I think that makes a lot of those issues kind of non-existent because you're not combining two streamers. Now, of course, you would still have the rights to the intellectual properties. So you'd have basically the value of HBO Max because they could just take all that stuff and put it on Netflix, but you're not technically combining the two streamers. I don't think that Netflix wants to do that, but if they want this deal to go through badly enough, and the regulation is what's holding it up, they could do it. I'm not saying they would or they will do it, but they could do it. The other thing that they could do is to just stand firm. They could just say, listen, this guy's desperate. He's putting a low valuation on the network's business. We think it's going to be worth a lot more. We think that you are getting good value. We think that we have made you the best deal. They'll lay out their own case as to why they've made the best deal. And they could say to the shareholders, okay, fine. If you want to take the $30 a share deal and go with this guy and go with this company, then you can. We'll take our $2.8 billion that you're going to pay us because you're going with a different company, and we'll go home and you can just sell to him. That's possible. Netflix could just say, we're not going to put up with this, and we'll take our fee and walk away. Again, I'm not saying that they will or they should do this, but I think it's possible that they could do this. This is obviously a story that we knew we'd be keeping an eye on for a long time, but it just got a lot more complicated and a lot more interesting in some ways. I guess I'm not shocked that David Ellison would do this. He comes from a family that gets their way. And Larry Ellison, his father, has done some of the most high-profile hostile takeovers in corporate history. So it's not like this is something that is out of character for the family's business portfolio. They are billionaires. And billionaires generally in this world, when they see something that they want, they get that thing. And they will go to any lengths to get that thing. And so we will see what happens. This next month now, it was already going to be kind of a furious amount of negotiation between Netflix and Warner Brothers Discovery to get that deal done because Warner Brothers Discovery said they wanted it done by the end of the year. Now you have to add to that this hostile takeover bid, the courting of the shareholders, making your cases publicly, and everything that comes with it. So I will obviously be keeping a major eye on this, and hopefully nothing broke while I was recording this. I tried to gather all of the relevant information and may have even included some stuff if stuff came out while I was editing. But I also wanted to get this out to you because this is a major breaking story. What was already one of the biggest merger and acquisition stories in Hollywood history has just gotten much bigger and much more complicated. Of course, stay tuned right here to the channel. I'll be keeping my ear to the ground. I'll be watching this as closely as possible, and I'll bring you any relevant updates. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'm sure I will be back with updates at some point very soon. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.